Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Invictus Racing League in partnership with RacingLineMP.com, the motorsport marketplace. Welcome to the Italian Grand Prix and welcome to Monza, a short chain journey just to the north of Milan. The 5.7 kilometre, that's 3.6 mile circuit. The oldest circuit on the current F1 calendar, having been built in the 20s, along with Britain, the only country to have held a Formula One race every year since Formula One's inception back in 1950. It's been held at Monza every year, apart from 1980, where it did go to Imola. But then the rest of the time we have been here at the beautiful Monza circuit. Of course, the famous Tifosi, passionate Ferrari fans, flood the stands with a sea of red, which makes it really daunting for the rest of the field as we see the drivers readying themselves up here. It's 11 turns, like I was talking about around the circuit. It's the 6th longest track circuit. However, because it is such a fast circuit around here, the lap times will be around the 1 minute, around 1 minute 19s. We're expecting these guys hopefully to be doing today. It's a 380 meter run down to turn 1, where the drivers will hit a top speed of 224 miles an hour. That's usually the fastest of the season, and doing full throttle for around 75% of the lap. It's 46 gear changes per lap. That's just under 1,220 over the race, and it's a low downforce circuit. The cars will be very, very fast in a straight line, but getting it stopped in time for the Rettifilio at turn 1, turn 2, that very tight chicane will be very tough indeed, and you'll find cars bouncing over the curbs, and it can really, really ruin your race and ruin your, especially these guys as we head in towards qualifying. And Monza itself is actually a twinned town along with Indianapolis in America. They were twinned on the basis that they were one and two of the most famous motorsport-based circuits on the planet, with, of course, the Indy 500 sharing the heritage that Monza has shared in past with its Ferrari heritage. We see here it looks like we're going to have a slightly overcast qualifying session today in Monza. Hopefully we'll be able to get the weather report in from the guys on the pit wall for what will be in store for the race. And the grid position here, there's no need for grid position too much because overtaking is highly available for the guys around the outside of the track is slightly cleaner and offers slightly more grip, so you'll find that the cars will run, especially down the main straight, to the left hand side of the circuit. There's 2 DRS zones, one on approach to turn 1 and one on the approach to turn 8. That's down after the second Lesmo towards, of course, the famous Ascari corner. And we'll go on board as it looks like it's going to be the Ferrari of Tony White, who's going to be the first one out on circuit, to the roars of the passionate Tifosi. They're going to see him rolling out onto the famous old circuit, and he does. So Tony leads us out on board, and he looks like he's being followed by the McLaren. That's Joel V520. Joel, of course, not had the best of seasons so far, what we were expecting compared to what he was like last season, but he'll definitely be looking to get back at the swing of things today. He did come away with the podium last week, as I'll go back through last week's race results. We'll just sit on board with Tony as he goes on his outlap, and we'll see if these two here vie for position, for, of course, prime position to set your first flying lap out there. Will it be Joel that hangs back and lets the Ferrari do that lap in front of the Tifosi, or do they push a little bit harder going down after Ascari to the Parabolica for that prime position, going on to the first clean running lap? The pit stop entry is quite a tricky one, and the guys will have to watch out during qualifying and during the race, as you can go from almost full acceleration into the stop, and so it's getting that car slowed down just in time as we see Tony here running through the Ascari corners, of course named after the famous F1 champion Alberto Ascari, who unfortunately lost his life at the corner back in the 1950s. The average pit stop here is around 21 seconds, as we have a yellow in sector 3, and it may be for Joel, as we can't see him appearing for the back end. As yeah, maybe for Joel's who's slowed down, letting Tony get a little bit of advantage going up, and will go on board with the Ferrari driver as he heads down full speed down into the Rettifilio at turn 1. And you see goes deep into the corner. That's just how tricky it is for these drivers heading around these qualifying laps, and especially on this first cycle lap. So already he's going to have lost. Tony's probably lost himself at least half a second, if not more, going into the Rettifilo as he's coming down towards Variante Della Roggia. Get it, brake just in time, kiss the left, kiss the right, run out a little bit onto the curb, and it gives you a nice bit of launch going in towards the first Lesmo. He goes round, keep it nice and tight, roll out to the outside. Perfectly done there by Tony as he comes to the second Lesmo. Quite a tricky corner, can catch drivers out, especially on the exit. It's not a level surface at all, so you'll find a lot of guys will be getting a little bit twitchy on the exit of there, so it's very important to get the second Lesmo as he comes round Ascari. It's important to get the second Lesmo right. Runs a little bit wide on the exit of Ascari. Don't think that should have affected him too much. What I will do is I'll just put on the telemetry for you guys. You can see what tyres everyone is running and what modes they'll be in. As you see Tony coming around the Parabolica, the famous turn used to be banked, of course, when this used to be an oval circuit. Tony comes across the line and sets the provisional pole position of a 1:22 flat. So not the greatest laps, of course. As you see there, 1:21.5 for Scott, who making his return after missing last week out. Scott does a 1:21.5 in the Toro Rosso. Joel V520 does set a time in the McLaren. That's a 1:22.1. And Mike does a 1:23.1 on the medium compound tyre there, so the hardest compound for Mike in the Ferrari. So definitely the two Ferrari boys, we're looking at improving their times going into later in the session. We are on board here with Scopefielder as he comes round the final corner of the Parabolica to go across the line, and he's looking at doing possibly a 1:20.1, just 1:21.350 for Scopefielder, who goes top of the standings by just under 0.2 of a second to Scott in second position. Chiltern Island puts himself on third position on the second row of the grid with a 1:22 flat. As you can see there, just how close it is between the guys at the top. You've got SJD's just overtaken as Malk in the Mercedes, a 1:21.1, an absolute blinding lap there from Malk, who really needs to rub the green today. He's not had the best of luck so far this season. He's had a couple of decent qualifying results. He's not been able to transfer that over to race pace, so Malk definitely looking at changing his luck when it comes to the race, and it will be definitely something that the Mercedes team will be pushing him to do, especially at the home of Ferrari, to essentially come here and spoil the party, as we've seen time and time before. And of course, guys, if you are in the chat tonight, feel free to drop me any conversations. Unfortunately, Tom isn't with me at the moment. We'll see if he does get a chance to join me later in the session. But yeah, if you do have any questions for me, if you want to see anything, if you want to talk about anything, I'm more than happy to get engaged with you and get chatting in the chat. And of course, if you've got any questions for each other, send them in. It's always good to see you all having a talk about everything that's going on within the race, within the chat. So good evening to everyone watching. Glad to have you on board here with the Invictus Racing League race with the No Assist Championship in Monza. As it looked like it did look like on my screen, it might have been a little bit of screen tearing there. It did look like there was a few spots of rain there, but doesn't look like we're compromised too much. It looks like everyone may be on their in laps so far. We'll look at Delange here, who's looking down into the Rettifilo. He's on a quick lap, so Delange just starting his flying lap here in the Haas. Delange doing very nicely so far this season, having picked up a couple of positive results. He finished on the podium he finished on the podium in Hungary, I believe it was. So it's been a pretty decent start to the no assist life for Delange, sitting in the Haas car. So quite an average speed car for this track. Of course, the guys in the power cars, that's the Mercedes, the Ferraris, the Force Indias, the guys that know they'll be quick down the straights, they will definitely have the advantage. Oh, as you see there, it looked like behind him may have been Jos just weaving side to side, or hopefully it was just him just trying to warm up his tyres ready for his hot lap. Hopefully it wasn't him losing control, like I said, on the exit of the second Lesmos. Delange comes down the back straight as he exits Ascari towards the Parabolica, full speed, full hot lap mode engaged on his ERS, locks it in for the Parabolica, keeps it nice and tight to the inside, rolls to the outside of the track, You can see ever so faintly on the left-hand side there is the old cobbled tiles for where the circuit used to be in the old pit lane. He crosses the line and Delange goes does a 121.9. That puts him on the third row of the grid in sixth position at the moment. As we see, he just allows Jos past as Jos goes out on super soft tyres and starts his flying lap also in the Sauber. So yeah, it's feel free, guys. If looking at the standings today, you can see, of course, SJD in the Renault today. He took the race victory last week in France. Second to Joel, second was Joel, I should say, and Nicky 9095 was in third. The two Force India drivers at the time of Joel and Nicky in second and third. Nicky and Joel in almost a race-long battle with each other, and it was really quite an exciting race for the guys around there. Unfortunately, we don't have Humbo Stone in the race tonight. He couldn't make it tonight, and he was our championship leader by 1 point. So Humbo Stone potentially losing his lead in the championship, and the guys that will be looking at making up for that will be Scopefielder, Delange, Boy Better Know, SJD, all the top 5 of the title, all very close, but Speed Queen, who is currently sitting in 5th place of a 121.9 on the soft compound tyre there, so great time there for Speed Queen. She'll definitely be looking at the potential of using, as Delange comes in, doesn't set a second flying lap, and will go on board with Jos, who also bailed out of that lap, and so we'll sit on board with the Renault of Mama Fisher. Mama Fisher, of course, had a positive race, finished second in Hungary, crossed the line in first, but unfortunately lost it on penalties to Jos, who took the race victory that day. So Mama Fisher definitely looking at pushing that Renault towards the front end of the grid. So as we look down here, Mama Fisher coming across the line, starting on the soft compounder tyre, so on the slightly harder compound. There's still going to be quite a gap between the super softs and the softs, but it all depends on how these guys. Really, it's down into turn 1. It's as Scott does the fastest time, a 121 flat in the Toro Rosso. So what's that? Just over a tenth faster than Malk in the Mercedes. So there's definitely time to be found for the guys there. As Scott absolutely blitzing that lap in that Toro Rosso Honda, as we're still on board with Mama Fisher, who did a 133.3. Of course, that looks like it was a warm-up lap. Get a little bit more life into those soft compounder tyres. DRS is open up into hot lap mode, of course, all the way through the lap. Coming up to Ascari can be very tricky. You really find it easier to run wide and invalidate your lap around here. Mama Fisher doing very nicely to keep it within the white lines on either side of the circuit. And he's going to head down the back straight towards the Parabolica. Still got plenty of ERS left in that Renault machine as he goes round the Parabolica. Don't want to run out onto the AstroTurf, the green on the left-hand side of the track. You will find yourself losing all grip, and Mama Fish is going to come across the line. It's an invalidated lap by the looks of it, as Tony Y puts it on provisional pole position, just beating the Toro Rosso of Scott by 0.02 of a second. So Tony Y currently sitting on top, and that will absolutely delight the Tifosi to see the Ferrari currently sitting at the top of the standings. Tony having said in the paddock before the race that he wasn't confident about his pace today and he didn't want to let anyone down, but absolutely lightning lap for him, and Tony Y currently sitting at the top of the grid. As we see SJD coming around the second Lesmo at the moment, opens up DRS now, goes across the line. He's going to get that flying boost all the way down to Ascari. You've got to be as brave as you can going into Ascari. Brake as late as possible to give yourself the traction to go into the left-hander. Don't run out too wide on the exit of Ascari, and he does perfectly runs out onto the rumble strips on the exit of Ascari, running up towards the Parabolica. Past the 150, past the 100, down to the 50, then brake, get it turned in, nice and tight to the inside, roll to the outside. Don't want to run too wide. He's in the middle. It looks like he may have bailed out of this lap, and he has. So SJD deciding to pull out of that lap. So we'll just check on board with some other guys. It's Chun Nyland out there as Tony Y does another lap on Supersoft. So it sets a second flying lap on the Supersoft. So possibly wasn't confident that he was going to get any that he wasn't going to get overtaken by the guys behind, so does take another lap of life out of those super softs that he'll be starting on. So it's going to be well, does he compromise himself come race time? So very interesting to see there for Tony White, obviously starting at the top, and with the Ferrari on pole, of course it's exactly where everyone will want him to be, but possibly compromises himself a little bit, because we know there's drivers behind such as Scott who will definitely be looking at getting a little bit more time out of that Toro Rosso. Malk has definitely got time left in the Mercedes, and guys such as Chill Nyland and Speed Queen can't be counted out. We know that they've both got speed. Chill's not had the luckiest of seasons so far, and Speed Queen also hasn't quite got into gear yet. We know how fast she can be, but of course Speed Queen will be looking at us. We'll quickly on board with anyone else as Yoss comes in. It's Tony Y, looks like he's going to be on his in-lap, so we'll go on board with Scope Fielder here on the soft compounded tyre again. So Scope Fielder out there on the soft compound, currently sitting in 4th position, so he'll be looking to improve his 121.350 on soft, so quite a tall order. But Scope has been vastly impressive this season. Of course, one of the Tier 2 drivers, new to the No Assist League, but he's well up to speed with everyone else, and he's been really, really impressive so far this season. It's definitely one of the drivers of the season. He's currently sitting in 4th in the Sauber, so the Sauber Alfa Romeo team were absolutely delighted with that. This comes up to the Parabolica here. You know, it looks like he's bailed out of that lap as well, unless he's going to go for another flying now. It does look like he may have bailed out of it. Yeah, he has. So Scopefielder bailing out of that one with 3 minutes and 50 seconds left to go. Definitely is time for him to come in and set a new tyre. Sorry. As Renault 9, we're on board here in the Mercedes, starts his flying lap, does a 122 flat. That's got him in 9th position at the moment. In the Mercedes, he'll definitely be looking at moving himself up further up the grid. He should have the power advantage over several of the drivers up ahead of him, such as Delange, Speed Queen, SJD. So he's definitely got the power in the Mercedes power unit behind him to get him up the grid. It's all about these braking points down into De La Rogia as he is here. Just don't want to run over those curbs. It can really unsettle the car, and you can find yourself losing a whole lot of time across the chicane. So he runs. We'll see. Yeah, looks like it's a pretty tidy run through the Lesmos. Oh, you see a little bit of a wiggle on the outside, on the exit. Sorry, of the second Lesmo. Giving it everything down towards Ascari, and Renault 9 does a 26.6, I believe that was, through the second sector. So he's going to run out slightly wide there. We'll see if that's compromised his lap time. If the stewards, they would have, of course, the sensors in the car and in the track now, find out if those cars run too wide off into the runoff area. It looks like he may have bailed out of that lap. We'll see. Or no, he is still sticking with it. Did seem to go slightly slow through the Parabolica. He's going to go across the line, and Renault 9 moves up to 5th position in the Mercedes. So 121.366, sitting 16 thousandths of a second behind Scopefielder in 4th position. So a good time there for Renault as he moves up onto the 3rd row of the grid. Of course, the guys should now start to come out for their final laps with just under 2 minutes left to go in the session. We're going to be on board here with Scott, that's Boy Better No SB, and he's going to take us on a lap around the famous Monza circuit. In fact, what we'll do is we'll go on board with Scott here. It looks like he's not going full pace, so actually we'll move away from Scott. We'll see if he's going to set himself up for another lap there, or just catch on board there with Mal, because SJD moves up into 2nd place, a 120.934 in the Renault. So cracking time there from SJD, last week's winner, to put himself onto the provisional front row of the grid. We've got a yellow in sector 1 right now, quickly cleared, so may have been a car just getting out of the way, and Malk sets the fastest time, a 120.680 in the Mercedes, so pushes the Ferrari Tony Y off of top spot of the grid, and Malk absolutely delighted with that, really hooked up that lap. And so yeah, Malk currently provisionally pole in the Mercedes, and the rivalry is real between the Mercedes and the Ferrari team. Tony White here with 40 seconds left to go. This is now or never for a lot of guys. You see everyone is out on circuit at the moment. No one is left in the pit lane. It's only Chill Nyland who's now just started later. So Renner 9 comes in now. So Renner has finished, so he will be moving no further forward. But everyone else on circuit on brand new tyres. It's only Scott that's done 2 laps on the Super Soft. So possibly doing the same as what Tony did when Tony set that time on the second lap of his Super Soft tyres. We're going round the final corner with Tony Y. He looks to have gone slower this lap. It's a 1:27, so with 4 seconds left he's going to have one more lap to go. One lap as time finishes on the session. We'll go on board with, we'll see where everyone else is on the lap. So we've got Scott, he's just coming out of De La Rocha. Scopefielder is coming down towards Escari. There's yellow flags at sector 2. That's a slow car. Looks like the Mercedes of possibly of Malk coming towards Escari. And Scopefielder heading up out of the Escari corner, launching his way down towards Parabolica. Sal will be hoping that he can get himself out, possibly up into second or third. It'd have to be a bit of a push in the Sauber. He's going to come across the line. Scopefielder does not improve, so Scopefielder sits in 5th provisionally, 121 flat. You see SJD staying in 3rd position as well, so boy better know he's going to come across that. Scott, he's going to come across the line, and Scott's not going to go any faster either. So Tony Y possibly going to be, it looks like he was 3/10 slower than his previous best time. He's going to go wide at the Parabolica there. You see he was slightly compromised by looks by Malk going into the Parabolica, and I imagine he'll bail out, and he does. So Tony Y only going to start on second at the moment, and that looks like that may be our grid for the race. So it looks like Malk will be your pole position sitter, which will not make the Tifosi happy at all. And with where was it? Mike starting 12th in the other Ferrari, so not the greatest of qualifying sessions there for Mike, who we do know likes to start from the back end of the grid, not to get caught up into any accidents come the first few corners. As we're in the garage here with the Mercedes team, you can see the guys working on the car. Starting to get it packed away, back ready for the race tomorrow, and we'll go through the race results in what was a very, very interesting qualifying session. We saw a lot of times being set by a lot of drivers there with quite competitive speed. You can see just how close it is. The top 6 split by half a second, with Malk taking pole position in the Mercedes with 1:20.6. Tony Y takes second with SJD third. Boy better know that's Scott with 4th, with Scopefielder 5th. Speed Queen takes 6th with Renner 9 in 7th. Chill Nyland comes in 8th, and Delange and Joel make up row 5 in 9th and 10th. Yoss takes 11th, and Mike and Mama Fisher will round out the final 2 positions in 12th and 13th. With Yoss, Mike and Mama Fisher all having the benefit of being able to choose their tyre compound come the race. And we'll go down through the grid advantage. It's pretty clean. The circuit is used quite often by a lot of other races, so it's not particularly a worry for the guys to start on either one side of the grid or not. So the guys will prefer obviously to start on the left, because it is the racing line, so it will be slightly cleaner, but not all too much to make too much of a difference. The pit lane here is about 420 meters long. That's 0.2 of a mile. Like I said, pit stops takes around 21 seconds, but the biggest loss of those on track, it feels like you're losing a lot more time because it's on that main straight and the cars going past are going 205 miles an hour, which means that you're limited to 50 miles an hour, which will feel like absolutely nothing compared to when you're out on circuit, of course, doing full throttle 75 to 80% of the lap. But yeah, so you really do feel like you're losing a lot of time, but it's very easy to gain it as soon as you get that car rolling down towards the end of the pit lane. But the engineering challenge for the guys today is that straight line speed. Like typically the straight line speed, they like to hit upwards of 225 miles an hour. So keeping that upper top speed limit there, but you need to retain some good balance because braking stability is crucial in heavy braking zones, especially down into turn 1 and turn 3. That's the Variante del Rettifilo and the Variante della Roggia. So the two chicanes to start off the lap. Of course, you've got the Curva Grande turn 3. Sorry, so della Roggia would be turn 4. So it's very low downforce circuit. So sort of how you would treat the Baku city circuit. Baku, of course, even though it's a street circuit, you do kind of tend to set up the car for the long straight because it does give you that benefit. Of course, the longest straight in Formula One, and it is very important for these guys to make sure that they've got that car set up perfectly because it will be your best overtaking opportunity come the race as we head towards as you head towards turn 1. And yeah, like I was saying, guys, if you are watching the stream, feel free to drop in any comments, any predictions. If you see anything that or if you're not seeing anything that you'd like to see, if you'd like me to talk about anything, feel free to drop it in. I've always got the stream comments open, so I'm happy to chat along with you as the race goes on, as it looks like we are starting to ready for the formation lap. It's a beautiful sunny day by the looks of it here in Monza. Of course, we're about 30-minute journey on a train just north of Milan. So, of course, the guys here will be staying in some beautiful Milan hotels after the race, making sure they make the most of what is quite a lovely city and for this famous race circuit. And we're going to go on board. As you see here, the guys just readying themselves. Oh, Tony White getting a little bit too much wheel spin off the line there. Doesn't want to get that started. We have seen guys struggle off the lines this season when it comes to the race, and it's especially here. I suppose the only benefit for these guys is that it is a very wide start-finish line. So if you do find something happening on the start-finish line, you can avoid it. And of course, down into turn 1, there is that runoff area, which you can take to if you'd like to avoid anything. But you will find yourself getting in trouble with the stewards if you're going a little bit too quickly through there, or if you're making up any time on anyone. It's quite high brake wear around here as well, so the guys will have to make sure they're not overheating the tyres and overheating the brakes too much. So just get the brakes warmed up nicely on this formation lap, because it doesn't tend to be the first lap that really where the cars struggle too much. It tends to be that the end of the first lap, the start of the second, where the cars have done that full straight down from the parabolica all the way down to turn 1 that might catch out some of the drivers. Of course, start finish line not too far away from, it's only a 380 meter run down to turn 1 from the start finish line, whereas if you factor in the whole straight, that then becomes quite a further distance than that. So the guys here, it will be interesting. There's Delange here, possibly in a little bit of tangle with Joel and Chun Island. It could possibly, we've seen desync, yeah, so we see Tony there being disqualified. So yeah, it's possible a desync there issue. We've seen cars get disqualified for a lack of speed on the formation lap. That's not a problem, and the guys shouldn't be worried about that with the stewards after the race. As you see, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a plethora of disqualifications here as Malk slowly brings that Mercedes in towards the pole position grid markings. Just pulls up to his grid markings here, up against the Ferrari on his right hand side. So it will be absolutely electric going down into turn 1, and Tifosi are going to be screaming for Tony to get a decent launch off the line, and we're going to wait for the red lights to come on. We do. We have 1 lights, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're held for quite a long time, and they're finally off, and Malk looks to have got a great start there, But look behind, it's a really poor start for Tony. He's going to get himself swamped going down to turn one. And look at Scott down the inside in the Toro Rosso. Is he going to make a move down onto back? Oh, the Renault straight into the back of the Mercedes. He's going to lose a whole heap of time there. And Malk really struggling as you see the Renault having to go through the escape road. And it's going to be a fight between Speed Queen, who's absolutely flown off the line, down into the Curva Grande as they go side by side down into Della Rocha. And it's going to be Speed Queen in the Force India who's going to take the lead of the race, but she goes slightly wide, and that's going to allow Scott to come back. He's going to go down the inside, possibly into Lesmo. There's still too wide. Fantastic racing from these two to open up the race, as Speed Queen's going to sit behind the Toro Rosso, and it's Scott's going to have eyes in the back of his head, and we'll quickly check with Speed Queen here. She's going to be tucked right into the rear end of that Toro Rosso going down into Ascari. It would be a really brave move on turn one to move down here. She's going to think better of it. Decides to stick in the rear end of that Toro Rosso. Force India, of course, very strong in a straight line. And she'll definitely be looking at moving that car up into overtake mode come the start-finish line, and possibly getting the move down into turn one. A fantastic start there from Speed Queen. 0.2 of a second behind Scott. And here he comes. We're going to see if she's going to line him up for the pass. Both cars going to be on absolute right on the limit, but it's going to be Speed Queen. It's going to have a look at the inside going into turn one. She doesn't quite get the move. Scott covers it off quite nicely. Speed Queen decides against it. Malk moving up past Joel will just quickly drop down and have a look at some of the other guys behind. So Malk going Mama Fisher, losing that position to Renner 9, who moves up into fourth place. So Renner having a good start, having moved up past Malk, the sister Mercedes. And we'll have a look down as Tony Wise, we see the Ferrari and the Mercedes battling. That's Tony and Malk. That's the pole sitter and second place. Now less than a lap, or just over a lap, after starting in first and second, find themselves in 7th and 8th position. It's someone going very wide. That looked like it might be Renner 9 up ahead. That's going to allow Mama Fisher right up behind them as we're going towards Ascari. And you see Mama Fisher and Joel side by side going into Ascari. Malk's going to look at this with his eyes wide open, hoping these two tangle up to whoever. He's going to sit behind the McLaren, which is going to really struggle for power. He's going to need to use that slipstream advantage behind the Renault if he's going to keep the Mercedes behind him. As you see, it's going to be all over each other. I am aware at the top we've got Speed Queen 0.2 of a second behind as she sets the fastest lap of a 1:25 flat. Absolute dead 1:25. Great lap there from Speed Queen. She's going to go side by side. We'll quickly check on it. She's going to go around the outside, but not quite. Once again, Scott defending very nicely into the first corner. And we'll quickly check on the guys behind. Of course, sorry guys, there's going to be a lot of flicking earlier on in this race between the drivers. We know there's a lot of battles going on. It's very easy to close up to each other down into turn one. Curva Grande done, and you can see just how close everyone is in the mid-pack here. You've got Mama Fisher, Joel, Malk, Tony, SJD joining the party as well. We've got pit stops for, by the looks of it, Mike and Chilled Island, and possibly Yost as well. And the McLaren, I keep on mixing up Mercedes and McLaren. Really fighting down in towards Ascari. It'd be a very brave move from the McLaren driver, and he gets it done. SJD kind of lets him go, but he's going to run out wide. That's going to compromise him on the exit of Ascari. That means the Renault's going to come back in, but you see he's going to run wide. He's going to come across. He's hit Malk, and Malk goes flying. That is, you really feel sorry there for Malk as Mama Fisher. We've got another Renault behind by the looks of it. We lost two cars back there. It's Mama Fisher who's just about getting it back and sorted, but so unfortunate there for Malk. I do apologise. We missed the battle for the lead there. Speed Queen has taken a race lead so far. These two are absolutely inseparable for the first few laps. 4 laps in so far, and they are neck and neck with each other. And the Toro Rosso is right in the toe of the Force India. Not quite brave enough. You have to be really brave to go down the inside into Della Rocha, but he's going to be looking at the inside into Lesmo 1. You can see the margins between the Force India and the Toro Rosso is barely anything in it, and We'll look at Scott, and in fact we'll go on board with Scott. We'll try it again as he looks at the rear end of Speed Queen going down into Ascari. Is he going to pull out? He is. He's going to make the move down into Ascari. It's going to be very brave. Speed Queen lets him go. He's going to have to keep it online. He does. Another move there from Scott. Oh, a bit of a twitch coming out, and that's going to allow Speed Queen to come back at him. She's going to be able to get back into the toe of that Toro Rosso, heading down towards the Parabolica. Not quite, but DRS is activated and she will be well aware of that. She won't have minded being behind because it now means that she can whack that battery up into overtake mode. She can open the DRS, which will open. Now you hear that beep, and she soars past the Toro Rosso down into turn 1. Absolutely flies, and you can do nothing about that if you're Scott. You just have to watch the Pink Panther sail by and hope that he can now use a little bit more battery. You can see that he's used up around 2/3 of his battery already, so this battle with Speed Queen has been absolutely frenetic earlier on in the race, but it's definitely draining the battery, and something they have to look at, or possibly a corner cut there for Scott. A little bit too eager down into Della Roggia as we're going into turn 1, and I'll stay on board with these two. They are the closest at the moment. Of course, I do see Tony Y and Joel having a battle over 5th and 6th at the moment, but Scott and Speed Queen still going at it for the race lead on lap 5 of 27. We'll double check. I believe they are both on the super soft compound. They are, so you can see there Mama Fisher down on the softs, and Jos Mike on the mediums looking to go long, Chiln Island on the softs, but looks like Speed Queen has pulled out a little bit of gap to the Toro Rosso behind, but he's still going to be in within DRS window. But we know how strong the Force India will be down the straight. How much has Scott got to come back at the Force India with? Does the DRS bring it? It's a 1:24.5 for Speed Queen. She's getting quicker. Scott, he's just not quick enough. You can hear him bouncing off the limiter in 8th gear there. 223 miles an hour. Oh, Speed Queen's going to go deep into turn 1. It's going to compromise on the exit of turn 2 as they head down towards Curva Grande. Scott's just not quite close enough. And we'll go on TV broadcast here. Scott's still sitting behind Speed Queen, 86/10 of a second behind. Speed Queen slightly stretching her advantage, dropping Scott ever so slightly. She's definitely going to want to get out of DRS range, because with the DRS being so strong around this circuit, it's very easy to overtake using the DRS, especially down into turn 1. She's going to really hope to push herself out of that zone, meaning that essentially she can then just push on from there and hope that Scott burns his tyres out, sitting in that hot, dirty air of the Force India behind. Ooh, running slightly wide, both of them not with the greatest exits out of Ascari there, but Scott does look slightly closer going into the Parabolica. Sits just over 6/10 of a second behind. Of course, Scott has used up a lot of his battery already, so he will need to be doing some battery saving. One thing you can do around here, though, is if you sit in Speed Queen, another fastest lap of 1:24.4. She is absolutely on it in the first few laps of this race, and Speed Queen currently pushing the lead out to 0.7 of a second. What I would be doing if I was Scott is just saving my battery ever so slightly. You can use the toe of the car in front, use the DRS, use a little bit of rich mix of your fuel, and just turn the battery down a little bit. Save whilst you're in the advantage of the slipstream. You won't lose that much time, and hopefully then he can look at pushing possibly towards the end of this stint on the super soft tyres, which we'll probably see the guys, depending on if they're going to run, I imagine the majority of them will try and go from the super soft to the soft compound tyre, so looking at possibly coming in around between a lap 11 and lap 13, I'd imagine. Maybe a little bit earlier than that if you were considering moving on to the medium compounder tyre. But of course the soft compound will get you to the end. We see the one stop does work around this circuit, but if you do have any questions about what's going on, guys, or if you've got any thoughts about how the race has gone so far, feel free to drop them into the comments. How do you find the race, or how are you finding the race? Yes, you see Speed Queen's moved out of DRS, 1.059 ahead of Scott, so Scott has now lost that advantage of the having that flap open in the rear wing, going down the main straight into turn 1. So Speed Queen now just has to get on with her race. Perhaps getting a little bit of a groove, not have to look behind her so much. Oh, Tony White picks up a 5-second stop-go penalty, speeding in the pit lane. Unfortunately there for Tony, very easy here to not get the car slowed down in time. It's probably going to be the medium. It is the medium compound for the Ferrari driver, who's going to look at coming back possibly on the hardest compounded tyre that we've brought to the Monza track this weekend. And we'll see Scopefielder currently sitting in 3rd position. Quite a quiet race at the moment. You can see quite a lot of gaps between the drivers, so the race is starting to open up a little bit. Scopefielder sitting in 3rd, Renner 9 sitting in 4th, with Jolfie 520 in 5th place, SJD 1988 in 6th, with Delange 93 in 7th, Tony Y sitting in 8th, Jos is in 9th, with Mike struggling down in 10th place. It looked like on the first lap we may have had early pit stops for Jos, Chiln Island and Mike, and Mama Fisher of course. Oh, it's Renner 9 we see losing there on the exit of Ascari, and that's both the Mercedes at exactly the same corner have come and met their demise to the wall, and the roars of the Tifosi will be absolutely delighted seeing the unfortunate end to Renner 9, who was doing really nicely. And Renner, we've seen he's really got the race pace, but it's just ever so slightly loses concentration. He did it in Hungary, he lost control and hit the wall there, and unfortunately today he finds himself falling out of a strong position, running in 4th position. And Toto Wolff will not be happy at all. Both his drivers crashing out early on in the Italian Grand Prix. And not a great day for Mercedes at all. And of course I was going down, as we were talking about before, with the guys on the grid, and we lost Malk earlier on. Malk unfortunately got caught up in Mama Fisher's accident. Mama Fisher coming wide out of Ascari, got all out of shape and just flew across the circuit. Unfortunately the Malk was just a passenger in that accident. He clipped the rear left of the Mercedes, and that put the Mercedes into the wall and ended it for the Mercedes driver for today, as we see both Mercedes drivers now out, having only lasted 7 laps for both of them. Well, essentially 2 laps for Malk and 7 laps for Renner 9, as Jos picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. You'll find a lot of guys will be running wide, definitely down into Variante della Roggia. That's the second chicane before the first Lesmo. Very easy to run wide, especially on the entry of the first corner at the left hand side. And we'll look down, we'll see Chiln Island currently the closest behind anyone at the moment, sitting in the house, not that far behind Jos in the Sauber, as Delange, the first of the super soft runners to or the first of the top 6 super soft runners to pit. He's going to come in. Quite an early stop there for Delange. We'll see if he moves on to the medium tyres. It is the medium tyres for Delange. 9 laps through on the super softs for the top 5 at the moment. Some of them will definitely be looking to push towards the super softs, as it looks like Chiln Island is going to be right up behind Jos, heading down the main straight as we go across the start finish line now. DRS wide open on that house going down into turn 1. Jos doesn't go defensive, but Delange thinking against it too, look like they're going to collide, and they do ever so slightly. A little bit of a love tap there from from Chiln Island, sorry. And Chiln Island goes slightly deep into turn 1, hits the side pod of the Jos Hanso in the Sauber, as the 2 Dutch drivers attacking each other going down into Della Roggia. You can see Jos struggling on those medium compound tyres, locking up into turn 4 there. And Scott, we'll move back up. So yeah, it's a race for the pit line now. So medium tyres for Speed Queen, medium tyres for Scott, as you see the top 4 all pitting now. So that's release Scopefielder into the lead of the race. Speed Queen 2-second lead by looks of it over, it's going to be even more than that, possibly 3-second lead over Scott as they exit the pit lane. So Speed Queen currently most likely in net first position. It would be impressive for Schofield to stretch out too much of a lead in this time to overhaul her advantage. She retains a 3.3 second lead to Scott in second position. Joel moved on to the soft compounder tyre, so 16 laps on the soft compound tyre for Joel. So he will be faster than the guys, especially in this first part when the tyres are brand new. He will be much faster than the guys in front. But with 11 seconds to make up to Scott ahead of him, it's going to be a tall ask for him to impose himself on that one. It might be a case of him trying to defend from the guys behind. You see Tony Y and Mike, both Ferraris in 5th and 6th at the moment. And we'll double check back down where we see the battles going on between Delange, SJD and Jos for 7th, 8th and 9th position. DRS is open for the Renault of SJD as they head down towards Ascari. Oh, he had a look down the inside. Just let him know that SJD picks up a 3-second time penalty there. Ran a little bit wide into the entry of Ascari there. So unfortunately, there's 3 seconds added on to his finishing time for SJD. He's going to be right in the gearbox of the Haas going around the parabolic, and they're starting to catch up to the rear end. Oh, as you see, looks to the inside already. So SJD not hanging about for anyone. He's still tucked in behind the Haas. He's going to try and wait to the last minute to get past, give himself as much opportunity as possible. To 2 almost banging wheels going down into turn 1. Delange not giving up at all. SJD just about gets it slowed down in time, and he does. So Delange moving down to 8th position. And it now means that SJD is going to go on the hunt for the Ferrari driver of Mike XSI ahead. Oh, it looked like there Jos all out of shape. Just caught on board. Oh, he slams the rear left into the wall. Just caught sight there of Jos doing donuts for the fans here at the moment as he gets the power back in, and those tyres are going to be hurting at the moment, and he's going to have to be careful because you know how easy it is to overheat the cars and overheat the tyres around this circuit. But yeah, just caught sight there. He went a little bit too quick into De La Rocha, and unfortunately there for Jos, a really hard hit as we see Schofield coming and making his stop, and he's going to go onto the soft compounder tyres. So Schofielder is going to be quick. He's definitely going to have a chance. He's currently only 1.4 seconds behind Scott in the second place at the moment. So don't roll out Schofielder of making attack on the top 2 at the moment, as Tony Y gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. As you see there, Mike and SJD battling. SJD gets the move done on Mike, so SJD moving up 2 positions in 2 laps down into turn 1 for him. So the Renault moving up into 6th position as Mike's drops down to 7th. And next on the order for SJD would be Tony, the pole sitter. Looks like he's a bit further up the road, so it might take him a while to catch up. SJD utilising those soft compounder tyres to good effect earlier on in this stint. Mike will be hoping just to sit in the rear end as Joel picks up a 3-second time penalty. So penalties starting to become out a little bit more. Oh, it's got a yellow in sector 2, and it's Jos once again who's lost it exactly the same corner, and unfortunately it's a retirement for Jos on circuit. And SJD, and we've lost SJD, and it looks like it must have been at Ascari. Surely it must have been at Ascari. 2 cars in 2 corners, we lose. Oh, and SJD will be absolutely livid with himself there, running in a quite a decent position there after picking up the race victory last week. You'll be absolutely gutted. So we're now down to 9 runners, 2 drivers out in around 5 seconds. Jos once again losing it at De La Rocha. This time put it into the wall and looked like it may be an issue, an external issue, and he was really starting to struggle on those tyres. Yeah, and Sab, you are absolutely right. The guy's really starting to feel it around Ascari tonight, and you know just how tricky it is for these guys that are running no assists, of course, no traction control on whatsoever. So you've got to be absolute pinpoint perfect to get round Ascari at speed. And unfortunately, it's so easy to unbalance the car around that corner. It's so easy to ride the curb ever so slightly and just get a little bit of aero disparity underneath the car, and it just really unbalances and unsettles the car, and they don't like it at all. And as you've seen, we've lost Renner to the Ascari corners. We've lost SJD to the Ascari corners, and we've seen Mama Fisher struggling as well around that corner as well. So yeah, it's not been the driver's favourite at all. And Scopefielder, he's lost a little bit of time to Scott in second place, now dropped to 2.4 seconds behind. It was 1.7, so it's a good start to the stint for Scott on those medium tyres. The guy's still relatively split up at the moment, only 9 runners left in the race. Of course, we've lost 4. We lost Malk earlier on in the race after he was caught up in the accident with Mama Fisher. Renner 9 lost a rear end out of the exit of Ascari. Jos, we saw hitting the rear end of his Sauber at the De Roger, and then the next lap also going into the barrier, so possibly an external issue. You'd like to think that the Sauber suspension on the rear end of that probably stood up quite nicely to the huge whack that it had to the rear left of that car. But obviously outlining issues with the car meant that he retired the next lap, and of course we then lost SJD almost immediately on the exit of Ascari on lap 13. And so the guy's still circulating here. We're still sitting on board with Scopefielder. And what we'll do is, whilst we've got the time and whilst there's a lot of, there's quite a few gaps, as we'll have a lap on board with our leader, that's Speed Queen 80, back where she knows she belongs, at the top. We know how quick she is. She's a multiple-time champion in Invictus Racing League. So she was delighted to get out of the Williams car and into the Force India, and you can see perfect through De La Roger there, runs onto the runoff area very nicely, coming round Lesmo 1, little bit of oversteer there, just got a little bit of slide on the tyres, running into Lesmo 2 there, straighten the car up as soon as possible, get it ready, get foot back down, full throttle, heading down towards Ascari, and this is, we'll see how much time she's making up. Drops down to 5th gear, left, right, and left again, still in 5th. Quick up chip into 6th gear on the exit, up into 7th. Stretch it out into 8th. Bit of a short shift there, up into 8th gear. Possibly saving a little bit of battery and a little bit of fuel. She's got the gap. It's 3.7 seconds back to Scott in 2nd position. Around Parabolica, and we're going to come across the line with Speed Queen. And we'll see just how brave she is down into Rettifilio. At turn 1, looks like she's starting to catch a lapped car. There may be the lapped car of Jos after he retired on circuit. As Scott picks up a 3-second time penalty, so disaster there for the Toro Rosso driver, who's sitting less, or he's 3 seconds behind Speed Queen, but he's got Scopefielder behind him, 1.2 seconds now. So Scopefielder now starting to make inroads on the Toro Rosso driver, and with the penalty now means that it would demote Scott down to 3rd position and promotes Scopefielder up into 2nd, which would really help Scopefielder with his championship ambitions. Of course, with Humberstone not racing today, Scope sitting 2nd in the championship at the moment by 1 point on 27 points. We've got a yellow in sector 1. We'll just double check. May have been some running wide at turn 1. We'll go on board and we'll just quickly check. Yeah, you can see just how close Scope is to the rear end of Scott now. You can see the Toro Rosso is not that far up the straight, and so it's Scott, how even though he would have been looking at coming back at the Force Injuries, who he can still see up ahead the road. We saw Speed Queen rounding the Parabolica there, but he's now going to have to start looking behind him. There's definitely the potential for Scopefielder to not just wait for the penalty to be administered after the race. Definitely get this move done. He's 1.4 seconds behind. We're on lap 18 of 27, so we're over halfway, quite considerably. We've only got 9 laps left to run, with 9 runners left in the grid. Of course, everyone getting points today, if all stays as it is. Mama Fisher currently sitting right down the rear end after struggling. You saw that spin that collected Malk earlier on. Chill Nyland joining in 8th position as well. Chill not having the best of races back there as well. Tony Wise done well to recover back up to 5th position. Of course, Tony starting on pole. No, sorry, in 2nd place, sorry. With Malk starting on pole. Malk, unfortunately, only lasting 2 laps in this race. We've got a yellow in sector 3. It's Mama Fisher that's now lost it. And we will double check. And where do we expect but on the exit of Ascari? And that's exactly where Mama Fisher almost lost it earlier and collected Malk. And unfortunately, that's exactly where the accident happened once again. So another car bites the dust at the exit of Ascari, which is becoming a bit of a car graveyard this evening, as we see a lot of guys struggling on the exit in that final part of Ascari. You can see Scope now within DRS of Scott down into turn 1. Can he get it slowed down? Of course, once you've got DRS, you get so much overspeed going down into turn 1. Sometimes it can catch out the guys, especially running such low downforce, sorry, that you don't realise you're going as quick as you are. You obviously have to completely rethink your braking points when you're following a car. And what we'll do is we'll sit with Scope as he follows Scott around into Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2. 0.6 of a second now between the two. Now, what Scope wants to get, he needs to get this move done relatively early, because he's on the soft compounder tyres compared to Scott on the mediums. So he knows that he will have the pace advantage for perhaps the next 2 or 3 laps. But then the mediums will start coming back into their own. They'll start improving. The softs will lose that little bit of life as Mama Fisher leaves the session, unfortunately, meaning we now only have 8 runners left in the Grand Prix. The Invictus Racing League Italian Grand Prix No Assist Championship in partnership with RacingLineMP.com, the motorsport marketplace. Check out the website for all motorsport memorabilia. As we see Scopefield at 9/10 of a second, lost about 2/10 of a second leaving Ascari and up towards Parabolica there, so not quite close enough this lap to get the move down into Scott. Scott slowly starting to come back at Speed Queen for the lead of the race. Perhaps she may have been looking after her tyres ever so slightly, perhaps saving a little bit of battery. Hasn't been under threat too much come the start of the second stint, sorry, after the pit stop. Scope now 7/10 of a second behind. As we see Mike coming into the pit, looks like he might go onto a set of super softs, possibly doing a Fernando Alonso and just looking at setting the fastest time. We know Mike likes to do that if he realises that he's not got much to fight for. He knows that he's going to get some points today, and he knows that it doesn't look like he was under threat from anyone around him, so might as well go out as Chiln Island moves ahead of him, but it won't be by too far, so expect Mike to be mega quick on those super softs, probably by the looks of it move back behind ahead of Chiln Island. But Mike definitely looking at setting a quick lap, and Scope much closer to the rear end as Tony picks up another 3-second time penalty. It looks like he should be fine. Delange sitting 23 seconds behind him, so feel free to pick him up for the moment, Tony. Yeah, this is definitely the opportunity for Scope, going down the main straight of Sauber, pulls out past the Honda-powered Toro Rosso down to turn 1. Scott doesn't have anything to do back. Does he get it slowed down? Just about. He's going to bounce over the sausage curbs on the inside, and that's going to allow Scott to come back at him as they go round towards Curva Grande. Scott is on the outside. He's going to be really brave to hang it around the outside here. He's going to try and ring him out there. They're going to go side by side. We've seen Scott do this. Oh, very nicely cut inside there. You can tell that he's a driver when you have that much confidence to swing it back into the slipstream of the car ahead of you. And Scott there realising that he wasn't going to get the move done. He wasn't far enough up at the inside around Curve Grande to go down into De La Rocha side by side. So he's decided to tuck in behind Scopefielder. He's going to get DRS down towards Ascari. Oh, not quite close enough, but he's going to be right in the gearbox of the Sauber as we head round, and you see it's a much slower exit for Scopefielder, and Scott is going to be all over him. We'll go on board with Scott here as he looks at the back of Scopefielder. Does he make a move into Parabolica? He's going to want to get DRS, and he does. Scopefielder, he's going to get a slightly more compromised exit. But Scott possibly feeling the effects of that dirty air in front of him. You see here the DRS is now open. Overtake mode has been engaged. We're bouncing off the limiter in 8th gear. He's not going to be close enough. It would have to be a real lunge down into turn 1, and he doesn't have the power to do it. He doesn't have the speed. Scopefielder all out of shape on the exit of turn 2 there. Doesn't lose too much time though, so Scott still 0.3 of a second behind, heading down towards Variante de la Roja. Scope's going to go deep. He's going to overrun the chicane, and that's going to allow Scope's going to miss the chicane. That allowed Scott to catch right up to the back of him, but unfortunately not quite close enough to make a move done. Scott on the medium tyres, Scope on the soft tyres, so the mediums will start. You see how much closer he is this time. He's not going to be, he's just not close enough to get the move down into Ascari. Now Scope was slow out of Ascari last time. It's a little bit of a better run this time, but you can see Scott is going to have a look. No, you can. He wants the DRS. You heard him take his finger, his foot off the throttle pedal. Just coast ever so slightly, but he's going to be way closer to Scopefielder, and this is going to be absolute, like nothing. Breezes past Scopefielder, and you can see just how much more speed DRS gives you down the main straight. And Scopefielder back down into 3rd place, got a poor exit out of Parabolica. As you can see, they're putting the power on too early. That's two times in 2 laps. Scopefielder just fraction of a second too early on the power coming out of Rettifilio. But the two are going to continue their battle. We saw Scott has definitely been in the wars today when it comes to fighting with other cars. Him and Speed Queen had an absolutely cracking battle for the first 7 laps of the race until Speed Queen managed to start pulling away, and she has done it so again as she stretched out her lead to 4.4 seconds. But Scott now embroiled in another battle, this time with Sauber driver Scopefielder, as the two championship hopefuls. Scott, of course, missing last week's race, which meant that he dropped down into 4th in the title behind Humberstone Scopefielder Delange. So Scott definitely not willing to give up race position too easily. He knows that he needs as much as possible if he's going to make a charge for the title later on in the season. And with Humberstone missing out tonight, it's all going to be between Scope and Scott. But with a result looking like it's coming Speed Queen's way, she definitely interjects herself back into the title challenge, as we see Scopefielder is going to go down into turn 1 and gets the move done. So swapping positions once again between these two. So Scopefielder back up into second position, and Scott back into 3rd, and the battle continues essentially. Not quite as close there for Scott, going down into De La Roja. Scopefielder runs slightly wide onto the gravel. That's not going to help his tyre wear at all, and those soft compound tyres. He will start feeling the effects of tyre wear soon, with 3 laps left to run. Currently you've got Speed Queen leading at the front, pretty carefree, 3.8 seconds. She's allowed a 6-second drop in her lead, possibly a little mistake earlier in the lap, but not too much to worry about if you are the Force India team. And Otmar Schnafnauer will be delighted with his driver at the moment, as he's got well out of shape on the exit of Ascari there, but he's going to be once again tucked into the gearbox of the Sauber, going down into the Parabolica. He wants the DRS, so once again he has to coast, take his foot off the throttle ever so slightly. But he's going to hope to tuck right into the back end of the Samba once again. And these two look like it's going to be round 4. And it looks like it's going to go to the Toro Rosso this time. And it is. Scopefielder just lets it happen. There's no point fighting it. You might as well just follow him through and let it carry on lap upon lap upon lap. Yeah, Sab, you're absolutely right. With the battle for second, this is pretty much handing the race to Speed Queen, and she will be delighted with that. Having, she'll know, she'll be able to see the two flickering between Scope and Scott behind, so she'll know that those two are fighting between each other. So she just knows, as long as she keeps it on the black stuff and she keeps it within the white lines and doesn't get a penalty, that essentially the race is hers, done and dusted. Of course, you don't want to drop anyone in with the commentator's curse. We've seen it happen so far quite a few times this season. I've been told to not talk about people all that often, because it does seem whenever I'm pointing out how well someone's doing, they do tend to then make a small mistake, which I wouldn't say was my fault at all. But you know, it comes as perks of the job. Being able to watch some fantastic racing, but unfortunately also some fantastic mistakes. As we see Scopefielder fallen back quite a lot from Scott on this lap. It hasn't had the best of laps. Quite scruffy through Ascari and through the second Lesmo. 8/10 of a second behind, heading down the main straight. He's going to get DRS, but he's not going to be close enough to get the move done into turn 1. Then what we'll do is just check on board what everyone's ERS levels are. You can see their Scopefielder still a lot of battery saved up. He's in low at the moment, so he's battery saving up into medium now. So Scope looking after his battery. Joel picks up another time penalty. I think that's Joel's 3rd time penalty, currently sitting in 4th at the moment. And he's starting to come under attack from Tony Y in 5th place at the moment. So what we'll do is just quickly check on these two. Of course, we've been on board with Scope and Scott for a while. We will check on board with Tony and Joel. The Ferrari Tifosi will be willing him on, hoping to push him up past the McLaren up into 4th position. These two look like they've shared out quite a lot of penalties between themselves. Might have to have a small chat with the stewards afterwards about extending the track surfaces. Of course, drivers wouldn't be drivers if they didn't try and explore as much of the circuit as possible. Ferrari, you can see just how much more speed it's got going down into Ascari. Tony having to brake a lot earlier. He's going to run really wide there, and that's going to really compromise him on the exit of Ascari, so he's going to have to catch up that time all over again. As you can see, 1.1 seconds now between them, which means that it might be a slight respite there for Joel as we go down into turn 1, because it looks like Tony's not going to be within DRS, and yeah, so it's just over 1 second now. So Tony there, unfortunately, running slightly deep into Ascari, meaning it's going to be, well, the final lap as we go on board for do apologise, completely forgot how close we were to the end of the race. It's gone so quickly. As Scopefielder, you can see how much he wants to get past. He knows it's the final lap. This might come down to a lunge into the parabolica between Scopefielder and boy better know SB, that's Scott. Speed Queen's going to take the race victory by all accounts if she keeps it on the road coming out of Ascari for the final time. But it's the battle between Scott and Scopefielder for 2nd and 3rd that's going to go down to the wire. Of course, Scott does have that time penalty, so I don't know, I can't remember seeing Scopefielder picking up one, so we'll look to see. This could be all in vain for Scott, and this battle could have been for nothing, which would be a real shame, because it's been absolutely superb driving between the two of them. 0.5 of a second for Scopefielder. He doesn't, of course, he won't know that Scott's got a penalty, and what we will do quickly is just go on board. Oh, just a more short. Yeah, we'll go on board with with Speed Queen, who crosses the line back at the top, back on the top of the podium, and Speed Queen 80 is your race winner. Scott crosses the line. Does he drop down? He doesn't, so Scopefielder must have picked up the penalty, so Scott takes 2nd place in the Toro Rosso. Scopefielder comes in 3rd. What an absolutely superb battle. Joel comes in 4th, with Tony Y coming in 5th, picking up another 5 second time penalty. Of course, he sped in the pit lane. Delange is going to come home quite a way down. He's going to be chased all the way by the 3 behind. That's Delange, Mike and Chiln Island all going to be finishing up within around 2 or 3 seconds of each other. Delange is going to come around. 17 laps on these medium tyres, so they're not going to be fresh at all, but Mike is going to give everything until the last second, and he's going to be super close, and they maintain position. So Delange finishing there in 6th position. Mike comes home 7th, and Chiln Island picks up 8th place and the final of the race runners. So congratulations goes to Force India and to Speed Queen 80, who is back at the top. Finally, she's had such an awful start to the season for what her standards are usually, and she'll be delighted to be back on the top step of the podium and back in the hunt for the title of the No Assist Championship. Scott and Scopefielder can definitely be pleased with their efforts today, both adding some valuable points to their race tally and championships tally, I should say. And I believe it will be Scopefielder that slightly maintains a lead in the championship, as you see there. Speed Queen with 6th up to 1st. Of course, she got that absolutely electric start off the line. She takes the win. Boy better know that Scott in 2nd with Scopefielder in 3rd. Joel comes in 4th with Tony Y in 5th, Delange in 6th and Mike in 7th, Chiln Island in 8th with Mama Fisher, SJD, Jos, Renner and Malk, unfortunately all non-finishers, and as I predicted, it was Mike that picked up the fastest lap in the Ferrari with a 1:23.783 on the 2-stop. So a slight win there for the Ferrari team in what has been a slightly disappointing race for them, after seeing Tony getting a poor start off the line down into turn 1. Tony unfortunately really struggling to get the power down as the lights went out. It got swamped going into turn 1. And we saw a little bit of chaos ensue later on in the second lap, when Mama Fisher, of course, lost control on the exit of Ascari, came into the path of Malk, and that put Malk into the wall, which meant that was the first retirement of the Mercedes. We then lost Renner 9 on the exit of Ascari. We lost Mama Fisher on the exit of Ascari. Lost SJD on the exit of Ascari. So it really was a killer corner today for the guys. And Jos, of course, had 2 spins at Variante della Roggia, both times hitting the wall, the rear left on one occasion and the rear front left on another occasion, deciding the tyres and the circuit just wasn't for him tonight, as Jos made his exit from the race. But congratulations to Speed Queen today on her victory. Congratulations to Scott and also to Scopefielder, who did very nicely indeed to put themselves up onto the podium. And thank you everyone for watching. Of course, you can get involved with Invictus Racing Leagues. Just go to our website, invictusracingleagues.com. Go to the sign-up page where you can drop in your details, speak to any of the admins, and of course, if you'd like to find out the league tables, they are also there for you to view to see just how the championship is going so far. Check out our socials on Twitter at InvictusRL. That's where you'll find all stream details. That'll be your commentators and the stream links. And if you've got any questions for the guys, feel free to send in a DM or send in a tweet to us, and we'll be happy to get back to you as soon as we can. And go to the Invictus Racing League store if you'd like to pick up any merchandise for Invictus Racing Leagues, where you can either donate or you can get yourself any IRL branded gear for yourself, whether it's personalised for your favourite driver or personalised for yourself. Make sure you check out our store. And of course, feel free to join us next week, where we'll be at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix for the final race before our season break. So we have 12 races in the season, 6 races, then a week-long season break. Tomorrow night we have the Performance Leagues, which will be coming back. So Performance 1 and Performance 2, which will be both held at the Monza circuit. And on Wednesday night we have F1, F2 and F3. And if you like competitive and fun racing, check out the streams on Wednesday nights on our Twitter page, where you will see some of the most fun and competitive racing anywhere on PS4 esports online, anywhere in Europe. So I do implore you to check out our Equal Performance Leagues on Wednesday night. And of course, guys, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you watching. It's been a pleasure having you chatting in the stream. And for me, it's been a lovely one, and I will see you next week.